Hello, welcome to another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is put the parsnips in the allotment. So we're just in the second week of May now, and the ground's starting to warm up, and you really do need to wait until the ground's warm before you put the parsnips in. They are a bit difficult to germinate, but as soon as they've germinated, they'll sort of carry on growing and be away. So as long as you can get them to germinate, you'll be fine. Now, what I do in the past, I have had a problem germinating parsnips due to the weather and other things, but what I try to do is to put multiple seeds in the same row, and this is a trick I do every year. So here what I've got is actually 3 different varieties. This one's White Gem, which is what I've grown before from Wilko's, only £1 a packet. Hollow Crown from Wilko's, again for 50p, so really cheap. Gladiator F1 hybrid, which is from Wilko's, again for £1.50, and then these ones are from Johnson's, and these are Tender and True. These sort of 4 varieties I've grown on a number of occasions, and what I do is I will sow in the same row all 4 of these seeds, and of course because you're sowing them all together you don't need so many of them. So in each of these, I don't know how many seeds you get, you probably get about 300 in each of these packets, which is more than enough you know, seeds per variety, because you're only going to plant one every sort of 2 or 3 inches, and then obviously you go back and put you know, some of the others on top as well. So you know, you end up with quite a lot of seeds in there, which obviously multiplies your chance of sort of the seeds germinating and that, and you know, sort of getting a good crop. So the one thing that you must do before you plant the seed is prepare the ground. Make sure the ground is perfectly sort of rotivated and all churned up, nice fertile ground. And what you need to make sure of as well is, if possible, to have the minimum amount of stones in there, because when the parsnip grows, it'll set down its tapping root, which is a very fine root going down. If that hits a stone in the ground as it's growing down, it will tend to make the parsnip either be short or to fork at the bottom. So what you need is sort of stone-free ground if possible. But obviously some people have stony ground, and there's no, you know, you can't really get around that. But if you do have stony ground, what you can do is make a hole in the ground with a stick, put a stick in the ground and rotate it round, so you end up with a sort of parsnip shaped hole, if you like. Fill that hole full of compost, and then plant the seeds on top of that compost, and then you'll end up with a perfectly shaped parsnip. But that can be you know, sort of quite sort of labour intensive to do that, but that's one thing you can do if you've got stony ground. So what I'm going to do now is mark out 3 rows in the allotment, and I'll plant these 3 seeds, and I'll show you me doing that. One thing you do need to do as well is obviously dig down deep, so you need to have at least a spade's depth in the ground to ensure that the ground is nice and you know, sort of rotivated all the way down to where the parsnip's going to get to. So you need at least sort of 10 to 12 inches of ground dug over. You know, it's no good just digging the top sort of 6 inches. You need to go down at least sort of 12 inches to make sure you've got nice loose ground for the parsnip to develop into. Okay, so as you can see, I've marked out 3 rows. These rows are 12 inches apart now. I always find 12 inches are just about right for parsnips. You can put them slightly further apart if you wish, but all I've done is I've dug the ground over, as I've explained, rotivated it so it's nice and loose, no weeds. And then what you need to do is then make like a drill with your finger. I always find that's the easiest. And you need to go down about 1 inch to 1.5 inches. That's probably about right. And then, as I say, in each one of these, then oh, it's got a weed in there. What I'm going to do is, in each of these, I'm going to sow the seed. So if I can get out the seeds out of here. Oh, there's actually some loose in there. I'll just rub them in there. There's actually some loose inside the packets, but here's the is the actual packet of seed. So as I say, you want to be putting the seeds in about sort of 2 or 3 inches apart, I'd say, along the row. So if you, as you can see, the seeds are sort of like flat discs, if you like. So they're the parsnip seeds there, like a flat disc. And what you want to do is, starting at one end, what you try and do is put a seed every sort of 3 to 4 inches along the row. So I'm just sort of spreading these out like that. And then as soon as I've put those in, so those are the tender and true seeds. Now I'm just going to go slightly further. Like that. These last few that I've got out the packet. So as soon as I've done that, then I'm going to put in on top of those same seeds. What I'm going to do is then put in some of these, which are the Gladiator F1. Now this can be a little bit fiddly because you're putting in lots of different seeds into the same place, but you need to do a few at a time, like that, and then put one seed every, let's say, 3, 4, 5 inches along, and you'll soon fill the row up with seed like that. Now what the hope is dependent on the conditions, at least 1 or 2 of these will germinate. As I say, in the past I've had concerns with germinating parsnips, but I find if you put multiple varieties in like this, then you increase your chance of actually getting something to germinate quite a lot. So that's the next one, and then obviously you can get the idea. Also put in the next variety. This one's white gem. So these seeds are slightly smaller. And basically sprinkle them along the row like that. And then last but not least, these are the hollow crown, which I'll grow pretty much every year. I'm just going to put a few of those in as well. So you end up with quite a few seeds in the row, as you can see. You end up with sort of 1 every inch or so, if not more. But you're running on the assumption that a lot of these won't germinate. But what you actually want to do is get a plant about every 6 inches. That's the ideal. Now, so each of these 4 rows has now got some of each of the seed in. So all you do now is, so there's a stray seed there, is just basically tap the soil back over the row like that. Yeah, and then just tamp it down a little bit with your hand like that. Same on the other 2. Sit and then tamp it down with your hand, so to make sure that the soil's in contact with the seed, like that. Tamp it down, and then continue that all the way along the row till you've completed it, all 3 rows. Okay, so that's all of the parsnip seeds in now. Now, normally I would probably just go up there with a 1 or 2 watering cans just to give it a sort of watering, but because it's going to rain tonight, I'll just leave them in the ground now. You don't need to overwater them, you just need to basically start them off, and they'll soon sort of be away. But you can wait up to 4 to 6 weeks before you actually see any signs of the seedlings coming through. But that's what the parsnips look like at the moment, and I'll show you when they first start coming through in a few weeks' time. Okay, then moving on to runner beans. Now runner beans, you never need to buy runner bean seeds. All you need to do is do exactly what I do, just save the seed from your plants that you had last year, and all you need to do is wait till the end of the season, leave some of the beans on the plant, and then they'll form the seeds inside the actual beans themselves. And then you can just take these off the plants. If I was you, I'd let them dry out on the plant and then put them in the garage or the greenhouse. Let them dry it a bit further till they're nice and crispy like this. And then all you need to do is basically knock them out and very quickly get all the seeds that you need. So I've never actually bought any beans at all. I inherited these off my great grandmother, and all I've done is every year I've saved seed from the year before, you know, since I've had them. And you never need to buy beans. Exactly the same thing with the French beans. I'll be doing exactly the same thing. You save some of the beans from last year, let them fully develop so you get the seeds inside the pod, and then all you need to do then is wait for them to grow, and then just basically take the beans out like that. Now what you're looking for, don't worry about the size of the bean. The size of the bean doesn't really tell you how big or how strong the plant's going to be. You know, a small bean like that will produce a plant just as good as a bean kind of like, not like that big. You know, there's no reason why smaller beans are going to produce weaker plants or anything like that. And basically all you need to do is remember with everything that's in the legume family, which are basically all the beans, so you know, broad beans, French beans, runner beans, and also things like peas and sweet peas. They're very hungry plants. You have to give them plenty of food in the garden. You need to give them a good start and give them good fertile ground to grow into, and of course they like moisture as well. So you know, make sure that the ground, as always, make sure that the ground is right, and then the crops will always grow well. Particularly with these can be quite unforgiving if you don't keep them watered and give them nice fertile soil to grow in. Now, keeping them watered, what I mean by that is obviously keeping them moist. What you can do is sort of dig lots of organic matter into the ground, and that will hold the moisture in the ground, so you don't need to water them continually, but what you need to do is make sure that the conditions you've got, you know, they never really go short of water. So as soon as you've got all of your beans that you need, you're ready to plant them into the pots. Okay, so as I explained, anything in the legume family are really sort of you know, sort of hungry plants. You need to start them off in some good you know, soil. What you can be doing is planting these outside. Oh, there goes one. You can be planting these outside straight into the ground, but what I like to do is to plant them in these pots. That gives them a good start, and then what it does is it makes a good sort of root ball at the bottom of the plant, and obviously that's, you know, there's lots of nutrition in this compost, which will sort of, you know, give them a really good start. As soon as you get a good start, then they're away, then you know, it's much easier. But there's no reason why, you know, you can't just plant this straight into the ground. Plant it about 2 inches down, in, you know, in the row, and away you go. But what I do every year, I find it quite beneficial to grow it like this. Now, beans are one of those plants that you know, you can grow 3 or 4 different lots, and sort of 2 or 3 weeks apart, and you'll find that they actually catch up with each other. So irrespective of when you plant them, they will typically you know, sort of catch up. Now what you can find is if you plant a load now and then wait at least 6 weeks till you plant the next lot, you can then get a succession of crops, but they pretty much, if you're not careful, they will sort of catch up and all crop at the same time. So all I'm doing is planting the bean around 2 inches down in the soil. Some people like to soak them before they plant them. You can sort of put them in water overnight and soak them just to soften the shells, but I've never really bothered with that because I find they germinate quite well, you know, without doing that. They do germinate really well, so I'm only putting one, with the runner beans, I'm only putting one bean in each of the pots. What I will be doing with the French beans when I do them is putting 2 in each pot. Not that the germination rate is bad, but what I find is if you've got 2 beans plants in one of these pots, then I just leave both plants to grow, and you know, that just thickens up the row a little bit. But there's no reason why you know, you can't put 2 beans in one pot with the French beans or the string beans. But what I would suggest with the runner beans, it's probably best just to have one bean in each. So the ground is the compost is reasonably loose in here. You don't want it too tight. You want them to get the roots away quite quickly if you can. So don't sort of pack the compost in there too too much. And then as soon as you've got the bean in, all I'm doing is just knocking the saw back over them. So take the bean like that, push it into the compost, and then just make sure that the compost goes back around. If you do save your own seed, what you want to do is make sure that the you know, the sort of the cover of the seed is complete. There's no split in it there, or there's any bits of it missing. The reason being is you can get sort of disease going into. Well, I've actually got a bad example. Oh, there's one. See that one there? That's sort of a little bit discoloured on that side there. I don't know if you can see that. It's a little bit discoloured there. So I wouldn't bother planting that one. So just make sure that the seeds are nice. You know, there's no sort of discolouring on or anything like that. Then all you literally need to do is just push them in the compost. It doesn't matter which way around they go, really. I tend to put them on the side so they sort of end up going in sort of like that, if you like. There's another one down the back. And then all you need to do then is give them a really good watering, give them a good soaking, because obviously you need them to get the sort of the shells to soften, so that they'll actually germinate and sort of start the roots off. Give them a quick tap. Then what I suggest is just go over each one and just sort of firm it down a little bit like that. As I say, give these a good soaking. They will germinate in reasonably low temperatures, and I'll be planting another sort of tray these out. So I'll be growing, for these runner beans, I typically grow about 40 plants, and then with the French beans, the smaller ones, I typically grow about 120 plants, to give you an idea of how many beans that we grow. But you know, most certainly for a family of sort of 4 or 5, you know, most certainly 40 plants of these will be more than enough than what you need. Okay, so now it's time to put in the spinach beet. Now, I don't grow spinach because spinach is very highly likely to run to seed. So if the weather's too hot, or they sort of run dry, if you get to water them or something like that and you have a really dry period, spinach will run to seed. Now, spinach beet can also run to seed, but it's considerably less likely to to sort of do so. So I always grow spinach beet. Now, spinach is always a crop that I like to grow. Now, this will grow this year. I'll be able to crop this from probably in about 6 weeks' time. I'll start to be able to take the leaves, and then that'll grow through all of this year. It'll grow dormant to the end of this year, towards the end of this year, sort of November time. It'll die back a little bit, and then next year it'll come back again. I'll be able to harvest off this all of spring of next year, up until about now. So I've still got spinach in the ground, which I actually cropped off this weekend. And I'll be cropping off that probably for about another 2 or 3 weeks. Then I'll have to pull it out because it'll run to seed. But it's a crop that really does sort of pay off growing. It will grow for basically 12 months of the year, and you can crop it for most certainly the majority of that, if not all of it. As these seeds come from Wilco's, as you can see, they're only 50p a packet. They're really cheap to grow. You get about 250 seeds in a pack. It's really easy to grow. All you need to do is get the ground nice and fertile, and then plant these in, which I'll show you in a moment, and then it'll sort of grow away. They don't need a lot of attention. You don't need to water them too much, but obviously just in sort of hot and dry periods, you need to keep them topped up with water, otherwise they'll run to seed. But apart from that, it's an easy crop to grow, and if you like spinach, you can chop this up. You can freeze it if you don't eat it all in one go, or you can just keep it fresh in the garden, just take off what you need as you go through the year. So this is spinach beet. Okay then, so we're going to put the spinach beet in. Now all I've done is I've marked out rows about 9 inches apart. This ground has been rotivated over. There's still a few lumps and bumps in it, but with the spinach beet, you don't need to worry too much, as long as you've got a sort of drill that you can plant the seed into. You can always break them bits up in a bit later. But this ground was a little bit hard when I rotivated it the other day, so I'll just have to kind of go along and break the bits up as I go. But all you need to do is basically put 3 drills. Now I always plant 3 rows at a time, because what I do is I put them like this, and then I find that easy to sort of weed and that during the year. So the seed looks a little bit like cork. Now what you can do, you can plant this indoors and start them off indoors and then plant them out as little plants, which is what I typically do. But there's no reason why you can't plant them straight into the ground. So the seed kind of looks like that, which is like little pieces of cork. And then all you need to do is sprinkle it along the row, putting the seed about every sort of 2 to 3 inches along the row. And I'm planting these about an inch or so down. Well, I just need a few more in there. Okay, then all you need to do is just knock the saw back over like that, and then firm it down with your hand, like that. Now, as I say, I would typically water this, but as it's going to rain tonight, I'm not going to bother too much. I'm just going to just basically push the ground down around it. Then they'll germinate quite easily in this ground. It's nice and warm now, so as long as the ground's warm, these will most certainly germinate. Then I should be able to see these coming up in the next sort of week or two. Okay then, so a second crop from the legume family are string beans or French beans. Now, I bought the first seed of these from Frenchie probably about 7 or 8 years ago now, and I've never bought another seed, because all I do every year is save the last few beans off the plant, let them run to seed. I mean, typically you always have some that go too far that you don't really want to eat anyway, because they could get, these don't really get stringy like runner beans do, but you know, they go a bit too far. So just leave them on the plant, let them dry out on the plant, which is what I typically do, and then just collect a handful like I've got here, let them dry in the greenhouse or on the shed over winter, and then in the spring all you got to do is just break them open like that, get the beans out. Any that are shriveled like that, for example, that's sort of, you know, not necessarily going to make yourself a good plant, but I'll put it in anyway. All you need to do is basically just put your thumbnails in, split it apart, as you can see, and each one you get anywhere between, I'd say, probably 6 and 12 seeds. And as soon as you've got enough, that's what the seeds will look like when you pull them all out. So all you need to do now, like, unlike the runner beans, like these runner beans here, like I showed you before, what I would suggest you do is put, rather than putting 1 in each, I would tend to put 2. Now all you need to do is basically push them in like that with your thumb. I'll do it with my left hand so you can see. So basically just put the seed on like that and push it in with your thumb. So you're going in about 2 inches or so. Put 2 or 3 in each of the pots like that. I'll typically do it two-handedly like that. So you've got 2 seeds. Try and get them in the corner. Try not to get them too close to each other. Now, I've not done this like the sunflowers where you put 2 in each pot and then take the strongest one of the 2. I typically have 2 plants in each pot and then just plant the whole thing in the garden when you come to do it. Now, I'm planting 120 of these pots, so I'll have sort of 240 plants in total. You probably won't need that many. If anything, I'll probably go over the top with these string beans, but they are nice to freeze. They're very easy to freeze. All you got to do is literally pick them off the plant, and I put them straight in the freezer. I don't even blanch these, I just put them straight in the freezer. So it's an easy crop to take off the plant and sort of harvest, and then just basically just put them straight in the freezer, and they'll last you all year round, doing like that. So obviously they're best fresh, but you know, you can freeze these, and they are a really good vegetable. They're full of, unlike other vegetables, obviously beans, anything from the legume family, so peas and beans, are reasonably high in protein as well. So if you are a vegetarian, they are definitely a good vegetable to eat. So as soon as you put it 2 in each pot, all you need to do basically is label them up, because they will look different to, look very similar to the runner beans. So as soon as you've got 2 in each one, basically just give them a bit of a tap like that, just to level the ground off, and then with another pot just go in and then just fern them over like that. So there's 30 in here. I'll do another 3 of these, and then I'll basically each of these pots will be planted behind a cane, and then they'll naturally just twist up the cane and away you go. So these are the tall ones. So these are grow up to about 8-10 foot high. As soon as you get to the top of the poles, what you need to do is pinch the top out, and then it'll tend to bush, and then you get more beans. Now, we're still in the early part of May. Beans really do not recover from frost damage. So if you don't be tempted to put these out quite yet. If you're going to plant them straight into the ground, I would most certainly wait for another couple of weeks until you know, towards the end of May, when you're almost guaranteed that there's going to be no frost. But what I always do is, beans are very, all the legume plants, peas, beans, they're all very hungry, very greedy plants. You need to give them a good start in life. So I always put them into these pots with compost, with obviously loads of fertile material around them, so they get off to a good start. If you put them in the ground, you've got to put loads of manure and compost and whatever else in the ground to give them, you really do need to feed these. In exactly the same way as you would with sweet peas or other beans, you need to feed them. But I wouldn't be tempted to put these out side until towards the end of May. Otherwise, if we do get a snap frost, they will get damaged, and they're unlikely to fully recover from that. So you're much better off waiting, because they'll, even if you put these out in May, they'll grow sort of slowly outside. If you put them in towards the end of May, you'll soon find that other people who put them out at the beginning of May, these will soon catch up, and before you know it, these are at the top of the sticks like everybody else's, and they're flowering at the same time, if not earlier than everybody else's, because they're not trying to recover from damage from frost. So you're much better off waiting till towards the end of May, if not the end of May, to put these in the ground, so you don't get any frost damage. So all I need to do now with these is water them, obviously label them up, water them, then leave them in the greenhouse, and then these will grow to about sort of a foot to 18 inches high when I put them out. What you don't want to do is let them get too long, otherwise they'll start twisting around each other, and you'll have to sort of start unwinding them from each other if you're not careful. So as soon as they get to the sort of the second lot of leaves, when they're about sort of a foot tall, that's when you really need to start talking about putting them outside. So this time of year now, the second week in May, is ideal for planting French or string beans. Okay, so now it's time for the gourds. Now, I've not bought any seeds this year at all. I've basically, I'm going to use the seeds that I bought last year. So I've got some butternut squash. So I'm only going to do a couple of those this year. I've got the pumpkins that I bought last year, which are these big max ones, the large ones, which did really well last year. And I've also got these Goldina courgettes, so which I grow sort of 2 or 3 of. So what I'm going to do is basically just plant the seeds into these square pots like I normally do. So what I've got here is I've got actually 3 different types of pots. These are different pots to them. These are slightly smaller. So if I just get the seeds out, so these are I've just got 3 seeds left. So those are the courgette seeds. As you can see, they're kind of sort of flat, very similar to pumpkin seeds. And obviously these are all gourds. So all the seeds are very similar. So I'm planting them about 2 inches down. Obviously I'll sort of mark those up in a moment, but they're the courgettes. Right, so for the pumpkins, I'm going to grow a few more of these actually. I'll typically grow about sort of 6 or 7 plants, in the hope that I'll get a reasonable number of pumpkins. Now, I'm quite intrigued because in this seed packet that I've got here, I've found 1 pumpkin seed in quite an unusual little packet, so I'm going to put that one in just to say I'm not quite sure that'll come out right, to be honest with you, but that's a pumpkin seed for you. Okay, very similar to the courgette seeds. Now I've got some more seeds in here, so that's what normal pumpkin seeds look like. So I'll be doing some more of these, but I'm just basically going to put these 3 in to show you. So basically I'm just pushing it in, put it in sideways so that the seed goes in kind of like that. Into these 3 pots. Then all you need to do then is just firm it down, give them a good water, keep them warm. So those are the pumpkins. Now I'll be putting some more of those in. I'll probably end up with about 8 of those. And then finally I've got the butternut squash. So I'm not quite sure how many seeds I've got of these. I've got 3 seeds of these left as well. So again, as you can see, the seeds are very similar again, just slightly smaller. So I'll be planting 3 of these. I've just got 1 pot ready so far. So again, just put them in about an inch and a half down into the soil, into the compost. Tap it down like that, and then obviously mark them all up. But those are the squashes. So I'll be planting those up, and I'll show those in a couple of weeks as soon as they're ready. So, I hope this episode was of some use to you. Please don't hesitate to put any comments or questions you got below, and I'll always get back to you. And I'll see you on the next episode of Jim's Little Garden.